Thanks, John. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June 7th Planning Commission meeting. First thing we'll do is stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Holtkamp,
Here. Can y'all hear me?
LaRue,
Here.
Moody,
Here.
Odine,
Here.
Prendergast,
Here.
Woolsey. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, for approval of minutes from the March 24th Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee meeting and the May 2nd Plan Commission meeting. I'll take a motion.
I move I move approval of the minutes of the March 24th and May 3rd meetings.
Second.
For a second, any questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor? Or
Aye.
do you want me to do a roll call since we got two on? Would it be easier for you? Angie? Would it be easier to do a roll call with people on Zoom or on?
Yeah, so. Yeah.
Would you rather have us all say yay or nay, or are you okay with us all saying it together? Okay, sorry. I know sometimes it's easier if you can hear everybody's voice separately, especially when we got some on the internet. Okay, sorry. Can we do that again? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, move on to public comments. If there's anybody in the audience that has something like to say, now would be the time to come up and say it.
Hello, Sean Downing, 421 West Division Street, River Falls, and I'm a council member for people who know me here. I just wanted to talk tonight about the undedication of parkland in Sterling Ponds and the history of it. And for a quick view on the history of it, you know, the discussion, I believe, started in November 2019, and they talked about some of what we're talking about tonight. Then it moved on to later on at the park board, where we discussed having amenities added to it, such as a softball field for children and a small dog park. And my question for undedicating the parkland, because we voted on at the park board unanimously, we passed it in the park plan. And then later on, the city council, which I'm part of, we unanimously passed it 7-0. So my question is undedicating the parkland undo the plans that we have in motion that have already been passed regarding the softball field and the small dog park? So keep that in mind, because if we don't keep and honor these obligations, what are we, who are we serving? So my recommendation is to figure out how we can honor what we already have in motion. And if we can do that, then maybe consider going forward with undedication. But if we can't, then I think we should consider voting it down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Downing. Does anybody else have anything like to say? Okay, we'll move on to ordinance resolution. Oh, yep, come on up.
My name is Kathy Peterson. My address is 3166 Sussex Street, River Falls. I live in Sterling Ponds, and we've been hearing rumors about potential things going in that undedication area if it does go through. I don't know if it's gone through yet or not. But as a resident of Sterling Ponds, I do not feel that a group home situation or a 50 apartment complex is what we need in our community in Sterling Ponds. I don't think it would be an ideal location for something of that size, nor do I feel that the development can handle the traffic that might bring into our neighborhood. We have very limited access on how to get in and out of the neighborhood at this point in time. We have lots and lots of children, lots and lots of dogs. We've already had instances where they've put a stop sign in at Newcastle and Dundee. There's only one stop sign instead of 3. And several times that people have almost gotten hit there because people just want to blow through the stop sign because they're not used to it. So with all the children in the neighborhood, the dogs in the neighborhood and everything else, we cannot handle the traffic that a commercial facility housing 50 people would bring into the neighborhood. Thank you.
Just to clarify one thing for everybody here, there's been no plans brought to us for this parkland that we're undedicating. This is strictly about undedicating some parkland that was part of a park plan that everybody agreed on, the neighborhood included. We've had no plans for anything going in there. Nobody's brought anything to us. So rumors are rumors, take for what you are, but nothing's being decided behind closed doors, no matter what your neighbors say. Everything's transparent. So just so we understand that first, this is just strictly about undedicating the parkland. Okay?
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Bowden. I live at 317 Clark Street. And I'm glad you said what you just said, and I hope that that is true, that things are being done in transparency. I think that the notion of undoing something that has already been committed before it's seen fully through rubs people the wrong way, and that sort of makes sense. I understand that plans change. However, to undo something that isn't even done yet doesn't really build confidence. And I actually wanted to speak on another issue that, again, even though nothing's yet been decided and rumors are rumors, once something is done to a certain degree, it can't necessarily be undone. Like 500 acres of prime agricultural land being turned into an Audubon racetrack. Those types of things, hearing from open house residents and the public that you're going to be reviewing later, I think taking people's broader concerns of how park space was number one. RF residents are proud of our natural resources, our parks, and sustainability. River Falls residents are concerned for the future of River Falls around housing, sidewalk and trail infrastructure, and again, nature and sustainability. So I just would encourage you to really think about the values that you have committed to, and let's start seeing those things through before we make decisions that are harder to undo. Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else have anything? Yep, come on up.
Nearly as eloquently. Jay Benson, same. So, I guess it might be a rumor. You know, those go around town real fast. But this idea that there's going to be an auto-based community built in property that the city is about to annex, I guess I heard of it. It seems to be news to you. Yeah, I don't know how we came out of COVID thinking that was a good idea. Just on a fuel-based thing alone, let alone volume levels, which I think is in the bylaws here, right? Like, prohibition of noise for vehicular means. But I don't think that's a good choice for us to make. So I'm going to come here on record today, and I'm going to say, I don't think it's a good choice for us to make. Thanks.
Thanks. Anybody else have anything? Okay, let's move on to ordinance and resolution. First one is a resolution approving the specific oh my goodness. First one is a resolution approving the specific implementation plan for Lake George Lofts. And Sam's going to give us a little presentation on this. Sam is one of our city planners.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. So the first item on the agenda this evening is the specific implementation plan for the Lake George Lofts. So a little bit of background on the project. Gerard LLC has submitted an application for the third phase of the University Falls development. The first two phases of the development were completed in 2010 and featured two 12-unit multifamily buildings on West Cascade Avenue. The general development plan was approved during the March 22nd City Council meeting. The 4-story apartment building will offer 32 multifamily units. The units are a mix of 5 studios, 15 one-bedroom units, and 12 two-bedroom units. The bottom floor will be composed of a lobby, mailroom, covered parking, and a leasing office. All 3 buildings will be managed from this newly constructed office. The primary entrance to the building will be off of West Cascade Avenue. As you can see in the diagrams, you can see phase 3 in relation to phases 1 and 2 of the development, and you can see an architectural rendering of what the building will look like. A little bit of background. Additionally, a little bit more background. There'll be a mix of 24 interior and 28 exterior parking spaces built. When the first 2 phases of the development were built, they had an excess of 8 spaces. Staff has worked with the applicant, and these will be included in these are included in phase 3's parking calculation. In total, the development will have 60 parking spaces. This is 4 spaces shy of what is required by code. Flexibility was granted to the applicant during the GDP process, and staff has verified that the current comprehensive plan, bike and pedestrian plan, and campus corridor plan all call for increased density and reduced parking at the site of the development. This is all background knowledge, and it's been addressed specifically during the general development plan review process. In addition to a section of the Kinnick Trail that was completed during the first 2 phases of the development, the applicant is also providing a publicly accessible pathway from West Cascade Avenue to the Kinnick Trail. You can see that outlined here on the eastern portion of the development. The next step of the process is going to take place on June 28th during the City Council's consideration of the specific implementation plan. With this, minor comments were provided to the developer, and therefore staff recommends the Plan Commission forward the enclosed resolution to City Council with a favorable recommendation contingent on final staff approval. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
May I make a motion to approve the PUD SIP for the Lake George Lofts?
Second.
Okay, we got a first and second. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Mayor. Let's move on to Parkland Undedication in Sterling Ponds. So, good evening. I hope you'll indulge me just a little bit this evening as I kind of take a few steps back and provide some history as to how we got where we are this evening. So, I went back into the long history, right? So, quite a while ago, this whole area was undeveloped, probably initially prairie, then agriculture for many years, as I'm sure some of you that have lived here longer than me know. In 2002, so just about 20 years ago, the Delander annexation came to the city, and Ames Development LLC was proposing to develop the area. Very quickly in 2003, it changed hands. The property changed hands. Archon Development Incorporated purchased it from Ames and proposed a traditional neighborhood development of about 676 units total. So fast forward a few years, some development had happened there, and we hit 2007 and the Great Recession, right? And through most of the housing developers, not only here, but across the country, into some turmoil. At that point, Archon Development started looking at its options, I believe, and started selling off a few pieces here and there, right? So one went to Hope Lutheran Church. They purchased in 2009. And in 2010, the city held a workshop with residents that were already living in the area to take a look at the options for the park and to kind of outline the equipment and amenities that were needed for the 4-acre space that was already dedicated there in Sterling Ponds. At that point, so typically when the city is developing the neighborhood parks, we use impact fees that come from the houses that are built there. At that point, there weren't that many houses yet. There wasn't that much impact fee pool to be able to develop that park. So the city listened to the residents, heard their desires for needing park amenities, and pre-funded playground equipment, relocated the volleyball court, paved the half basketball court, added assigned trash containers, benches, and trees to the 4-acre parcel. As development continued, then those impact fees paid the city back for those amenities. So this kind of shows, this is the 2003 plat that came forward. You can see it was primarily housing. Can we point? It's in the mouse. Can you guys see the mouse if I come up here? Okay. So this was slated for potential development. This corner here was slated for commercial development. This was simply a lot slated for the development. This is Hope Lutheran's lot. And this area was slated for parkland down along the highway. So that's what it looked like in 2003. Fast forward to 2011, then the city purchased 74 acres to construct the Sterling Ponds Corporate Park, this again being in the middle of the recession and housing not moving as quickly as it probably could have been projected to. In 2018, the city sold 2.5 acres just along the corporate park to GMTZ LLC to develop housing right along the southeast side of the corporate park there. And there were a number of other purchases and subdivision phases that happened between 2004 and 2019. The Villas of Sterling Ponds came on in multiple phases, Sterling Heights Townhomes, the Aberdeen, and multiple phases of the Sterling Ponds subdivision itself. In 2020, the Sterling Ponds Park Plan was adopted both by City Council upon the recommendation of the Park Board. And in 2021, the city started implementing that plan when the Sterling Ponds 3rd edition came forward with their final plat. I'll show you a graphic of this in just a few minutes. But there was parkland to be dedicated behind the 3rd and 4th editions. Staff worked with the developer to not have that parkland dedicated. So the park plan has already started to be implemented as of 2021. Gets us to today, where the park plan recommends undedicating 3 acres of parkland to the northwest of the current park for some neighborhood commercial development. So the intent, this is the parkland concept from 2018. It kind of shows the preliminary plat. The 4 acres right here is the original park that we have today. This 5.1 acres was dedicated as these phases came on. And this is the 4 acres that has not been dedicated. So currently, and again, I have this further down in the presentation, these lots now extend out to this border. So into the Sterling Ponds Park Plan, the intent really was threefold: to review the existing park and open space acreage against the city's parkland dedication requirements, to determine recreational needs of the neighborhood, and to recommend maintenance and facility improvements for the park itself. So in doing so, there's some definitions that help if you understand as you walk through the park plan. Parkland, outlots dedicated specifically to the public for developing parks, Open space includes dedicated parkland, but also other features such as stormwater ponds, wetlands, slopes, etc. Active recreation are the developed park facilities like the ball fields, the playgrounds, the basketball courts. Yet then there's passive recreation, which are minimally developed facilities, which include walking, hiking, photography, etc. So all of those factors are considered when we did the analysis for the park plan. If you take a look at the analysis, you can see dedicated parkland was to be at 13.57 acres on the right here. The amount of open space, total open space at the time, was 57 acres. Again, those are factors that come into play as we do the analysis. So the National Park and Recreation Standards recommends a minimum of 3 acres of park per 1,000 residents. By that standard, the existing developed park adequately supports the Sterling Ponds neighborhood. City code, on the other hand, requires 24.3 acres of parkland, but it doesn't consider the vast amounts of open space, greenways, streams, prairies, and forests that surround Sterling Ponds. An additional consideration should be given to the city's 3 regional parks, Hoffman, Glen, and DeSanctis, as well as the future regional parks that will be identified as part of the outdoor recreation planning process and ultimately the comprehensive planning process that is currently underway. So this is a view from the plan of what's currently there today. Again, the current developed park, 4 acres, the outlot here of just about 5 acres that currently is unmowed, ungraded, and includes the berm along the highway with trees. So the proposal from the plan, the recommendation, is to undedicate approximately 3 acres. This area right here, the unmowed, ungraded area of dedicated parkland for a neighborhood commercial development. Initially, staff was thinking a daycare would fit well there, just for example. It would add approximately an acre to the park. If you remember this linear line that was part of this parcel, that would be now included into the developable park, getting it to just about 5 acres. So public participation and how has it happened in the past. I mentioned the 2010 workshop. There was a response rate to a survey of about 43%. The top desires at that point were paved walking and biking paths, playground equipment, trees, and landscaping. Those were implemented at that time, as we discussed. So in 2019, as we were working on the park plan, we once again reached out to residents with a survey. We received about a 29% response rate, and the top 3 desires in 2019 were again paved walking and biking paths, a picnic shelter, and a ball field, all of which have been incorporated into the recommendations of the plan. So currently, as part of that piece of implementation of the plan, our operations director has an RFP out to do landscaping in the area, in the park, where it would upgrade the berm, it would do some grading and get some actual black dirt down in the park, since that is lacking as well. That would happen this year. And some of the other amenities would come forward as well. Probably not the picnic shelter this year, but that has potential for the next year or 2. But the rest of the items could potentially happen there this year. So I talked a little bit about the implementation that's already happened. This graphic is a little small, but you can start to see how those lots have extended out to the property line in the 3rd and 4th edition down here, instead of having that area dedicated as parkland. So tonight, again, staff has brought forth the parkland undedication as another step in the implementation. And we talked about the park amenity development and also the there is the disc golf course that is being developed on the hillside as well. So the process, the survey is in process. We've got the May council meeting was referred back to the Plan Commission, so step 2 is completed. We're here at step 3 this evening. You can see a draft of the certified survey map to the right, which has just about a 3-acre lot here, and the increased size of the park, the actual park here. So if you go forward this evening, it will go back to City Council for their review, and then if there's a favorable review from the council, would potentially go to City Circuit Court for the undedication process. So staff's recommendation is to approve the attached resolution to continue with the undedication process. Next steps would include Circuit Court application and a joint agreement with the original developer who dedicated the parkland. And of course, the options that you typically have are to approve, to not approve, to amend the resolution, or to table with just cause. So Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, first I'll take a motion on this and we'll have some discussion.
I'll make the motion to undedicate the parkland.
I'll second.
Okay, first and second. Okay, questions, comments?
I've got a question. Ms. Peterson, if you could step forward. Could you describe the circuit court process a little bit? This is an unusual step.
It is unusual. Not our typical process, but the council, I believe, makes application to the circuit court, which they then consider the evidence and past precedent and make a recommendation as to whether or not the parkland be undedicated or not.
Okay. Are you aware, do they hold a hearing, or is it just like an administrative review?
I am not positive.
Okay.
Other questions?
I have one.
Yep.
With the need for housing, based on the survey that was done not too long ago, what precipitated the thought of residential commercial going in lieu of more houses in that particular spot? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so traditional neighborhood development is what that whole area is zoned, which by code includes a mix of uses. So initially we were to have commercial up at the corner of Chapman and Hubert. And we had a proposal come forward for residential in that area. And as we considered that proposal and knowing the commercial market, the way it has been recently, there's not a whole lot of demand, right, for commercial. We didn't necessarily see the commercial happening in that location. We saw, if it was going to happen, probably over north of the corporate park, right? So in an attempt to be successful with the T&D zoning, we need some commercial in that neighborhood. So that's why we were looking at a potential commercial location there.
So more or less just a swap of locations that was initially, okay.
Correct.
So Amy, I mean, this is Chris. Looking at that spot, given its lack of visibility and the fact that it's tucked kind of up into the neighborhood, you're not going to get commercial there in terms, I mean, if you're thinking commercial of like a coffee shop or a cafe or something like that, I mean, what's going to go in there would be like some kind of housing something, because you just don't have any access and visibility to that space for like a retail business. So I don't think it's a good fit for a commercial use, just given where it's located.
So again, it was neighborhood commercial that we were looking for potentially, and thought that, you know, a use that would both support the residential community and the corporate community there, like a daycare, would be a good fit. I suppose we'd probably tossed around a fitness center as well, something in that realm that would serve both of those already existing uses.
Anybody else?
I do have a question, and this is Patricia LaRue. I'm chairman of the park board, so my questions are going to be fairly lengthy if anyone else wants to ask questions before I start asking questions. Or just go for it.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm trying to wrap my arms around, we know this has been a collage of ordinances and owners and developments and changes in the market. And having been part of this process for quite a long time, I think I can say pretty certainly that no one now are making decisions who were here in 2003 making decisions. So I'm going to go to 2019. So in 2019, the plan was to have 4 acres of developed parkland, which we had, 5 acres of developable parkland, not, it hadn't been developed, but it was developable. And then there's 4 acres of potential. So who owned that property in 2019 that was going to be parkland?
Okay, let me see if I can scoot back to here. So I think, as I may have mentioned when Sterling Ponds first started developing, this 4 acres was the first parkland that was dedicated.
So that becomes the property of River Falls.
Correct.
The contractor doesn't have to develop that parkland. It comes to us and we're responsible for it, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
So then
we got, go ahead.
As development continued, then this 5.1 acres was also dedicated as parkland.
And is that the DMZ? I don't remember their initials, but it's all initials. Is that
so this
all of
was
their property?
This was dedicated by GMTZ LLC, yes.
Okay, because I thought only 2.5 acres were dedicated by them, but they dedicated the full 5.1 and that became River Falls's responsibility. Again, we own it, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then these 4 acres of potential acres that were absorbed into the lots, which we all approved just a few months ago, who owned that property?
GMTZ LLC.
Okay, so we never owned it. It was just their possibility.
Correct.
Okay, wonderful. So when we get to the code, when the park board considered the plan, and on table 4, it on page 12 of the park plan, it says required parkland dedication per section 16.20.010B of the city's municipal code requires 18.58 acres of parkland, not open space, but it says parkland in the, and there's a different, parkland is open space, but open space isn't necessarily parkland, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, but again, through all the machinations that have been happening, it ended up that 9 acres were being considered because we gave up the 4. 9 acres were being considered for this parkland. Why is it now not important for the Sterling Ponds residents to have 9 acres, but to only have 5 acres?
So if I can back up just a moment, at the time that this plan was coming through, all 9 acres was on the table. This plan was approved with this plan proposed. It really was, I mean, part of the bringing the plan forward was for staff to be able to understand what was needed here as these potential developments continued to come on. So on the bottom of page 13, it talks about how the city's parkland ordinance is strictly defined to require only flat, dry, developable parkland. And it doesn't consider the open space, like the national standard of the National Recreation and Parks Association. So really, staff was taking a balance between the two different sets of standards and trying to determine what was best for the community in the future, from not only the residents' best interest, but from the city's best interest, from a maintenance and upkeep and production, I guess, perspective.
So it's probably important for our upcoming plans that possibly we're not going to tell people that we would support, what was it? 18.58 acre, 18 acres for 1,000 residents, but we're okay with 5 acres per 1,000. Because right now we're operating under the ordinance we have. So with regard to that, so those 5 acres have never been something that we maintain that? Do we mow it? Do we take care of it? Or does it just sit there?
I believe it might get mowed once or twice a year.
Just to keep the, okay. Then I have a problem with this, given what I was part of the park board. I was part of the park board that approved this. But in the meantime, we've had this comprehensive plan that we're working on. And we've told people, tell us what you think. Show up to, answer surveys. Show up to open houses. Give us your thoughts, because you are the people we are listening to when we make this plan. So this is a change since 2019. And on page 1 of our handout tonight is just a graphic of our open house summary. And it says issues and opportunity engagement activities. And the biggest word, the words on this page relate to how many times people refer to them. And the biggest word is parks. On page 23, it says, if someone was a visitor in River Falls for a day, what would you recommend them do? And it says, visit parks and recreate. On page 24, how should we prioritize utilities and community facilities? The number one by far is parks. Page 26, where would you like to see an increased investment to improvement or enhancement of the quality of the community services and facilities in River Falls? By far, parks and trails. Page 30 is a thing, how would you describe the supply of the following spaces or uses in River Falls? Parks and recreation, there's a small percentage that had no opinion. A very large band says there's not enough. Some says there's just the right amount, but even though the option of there's too much, nobody said there was too much. On page 31, it asks again about parks, and parks is a strong cultural engagement and agricultural activities. Parks is heavy. So you can go on in these surveys, and the people are telling us the parks are important to them. And then one of the first acts we do is say, this 5 acres is too hard to mow and maintain, so we're going to develop it. So I'm having a problem with that, even though I was on the park board and I was one of the unanimous people who approved the Sterling Ponds plan. I think we need more time. I don't think we need to undedicate this in the next month or two. That maybe in the survey that we gave to the Sterling Ponds people, we didn't ask them, can we remove, what would you want us to do if we removed 5 acres and made it a 4 acre? Well, I'm sorry, you're right. It's going to be a 5 acre park and we're going to remove. 3 acres or something. But that might be, they didn't have a chance to chime in on that. So I'm not saying I'm totally against this. I think that Sterling Ponds is kind of, our plan acknowledges that they're removed from the rest of the city. And they might benefit well if that could be a little convenience store, or we could ensure them that this was going to be something that the community needs out there versus we're going to take this away from you and we're going to sell it to the highest bidder. And well, and it has to, obviously it has to meet code and stuff. So I think maybe if we could just take a breather, give people a chance to weigh in. I could get behind this if the people of Sterling Ponds felt comfortable with it. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, yep.
Related to Patricia's comments, I just pulled up the actual ordinance, the actual park ordinance. That's the official legal ordinance for the city of River Falls, which says that whenever a development is created, et cetera, the developer shall be required to dedicate for parks, playgrounds, and other open space purposes a parcel of land equal to 10% of the gross area of all property proposed for subdivision. And I just wanted to be clear that our actual ordinance does include open spaces. And one of the really nice things about Sterling Ponds is the disc golf course that's going to be created, the wonderful parks, the wonderful trails they have. They've got a lot of open space that's part of that community. So I, in my own mind, it's a little more complex than just what's officially a park.
And I will just say that's how it was presented to the park board when we voted on it. The language in the plan is what we voted on. Another thing I forgot I was going to ask is, when you talk about the circuit court, is the property is in St. Croix, River Falls is in Pierce. Which court will be hearing this matter?
Well, River Falls is in Pierce and St. Croix. I would assume that since this is in St. Croix County, it would go to St. Croix.
Okay. And the other thing I forgot to say is the original park plan that came to us talked about a $600,000 investment in this area. And it says if the recommendations are to take effect, then we would suggest that this 5 acres can become developed. One of the options was a dog park for that 5 acres. It wasn't like a blanket, this goes to commercial use. We did consider and recommend that one of the options would be a dog park. But of that 600,000, I do know you said that some of the things have been implemented. How have we improved this since 2019?
So improvements have not been completed in the park since 2019. We did include the recommendations from the park plan in the capital budget. So there's just over 108,000 in for this year, which is going to include the berm and landscaping, which if I look at page 38 with in Appendix F, talks about just under 60,000 was estimated for the berm and landscaping. So if that comes true to bid this year, then there would be, if my math holds, what, about 50,000 or so left to be able to do the signs, the benches, the grills, the trash cans, the picnic tables, the ball field backstop with bases. So the things that I would say would not necessarily happen this year, one is the picnic shelter. The other is additional playground equipment. I believe in the CIP, if memory serves me, that might be slated for 2027. And the paved trail on Old Jersey Road and on Hoopert Street, those are the bulk of the cost, and those are, I believe, later in the development timeline.
Okay, and the last thing, and I said this last time, I said the last thing, when there's a park dedication fee, so there's been a lot of development out there, But those park dedication fees goes into a fund. It's not allocated solely for Sterling Ponds. It goes into a larger fund, and that money for, one of those apartment buildings, or even the new apartment building, if there's one that goes up, would go just into a fund and could actually be used for Wells Park or Westdale Park, correct?
Yes.
Or is it
so
dedicated solely to Sterling Ponds?
It is not. When when the impact fees come in, you're correct. They're split into two separate pots on a 60-40 split. Again, if memory serves me correctly, I think 60% goes into the regional park fund. So those funds are used for DeSanctis, Glen, Hoffman, right? The 40% goes into a neighborhood park fund, not specific to, $500 came from Sterling Ponds. It's going to go back into Sterling Ponds. It's pooled, and the staff and council determine which park needs the amenities next, and impact fees are used for those neighborhood parks.
Amy, I want to thank you for your time and your professionalism. You have answered my questions. I know they're coming out of the blue, and I think you just are right on top of this. I trust you, and I think you've done a good job presenting it and doing your best to try to help us make sense of, again, what was a collage of just changes since 2003, almost a 20-year period. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anybody else have anything for Amy?
I have a couple more questions.
Yep.
In the packet, it says, as part of the undedication process, the property will be returned to the developer in the court order, as that is most typical in recent dedication scenarios. Then the developer will gift the land back to the city. So is there some kind of contract or agreement that says the developer will actually give us the land back? Or is that just kind of like a gentleman's agreement? How does that work? And then the other question is, if the city does own this property, what's the thinking behind how we do get a development proposal for it? Is the city going to market it? Are we going to work with the neighborhood to come up with ideas for what they might support? What would happen next once the city owns the property and it's not a park anymore?
Sure. So the undedication process, I think had been mentioned earlier in the meeting, is not something that happens too often. And I think typically when it happens, it would be in a long-term type scenario where the area developed, the parkland was dedicated. 50 years later, the city wants to undedicate the parkland. At that point, we don't even know who dedicated it originally, maybe that company no longer exists. So in that type scenario, we would ask the circuit court to provide that property back to the city. This has happened recently. We know who the developer is. They're still developing in Sterling Ponds, right? So we've had conversations with the developer. He's amenable to this process. So I may have mentioned at some point in the presentation that there would be an agreement that would need to be put in place between the developer and the city. Typically, what would happen is the circuit court would turn the property over to the developer. We would have an agreement that said, circuit court, turn it to the developer. Developer, you will then turn it to the city. So that's an agreement that would need to take place between the developer and the council. And your second question, I've now forgotten.
That's okay. What would the process be then for planning what to do with that parcel once the city owns it? What would we do in terms of coming up with these? I mean, you talked about a daycare. There's obviously this idea of a group home that's out there. Like, what would be the process for determining what would actually be allowed to get there? If the city owns it, we have control over that.
Right, thank you. So I will say that currently, because of the adopted park plan, we have been lightly marketing the parcel with the contingency that anybody that is interested needs to know that there's a whole process that needs to take place before it could ever be an available space. So It is, I believe, on our city website as the potential for an available parcel. We have talked with folks about it. I think we would continue that mode. And obviously it would need to fit in with the traditional neighborhood zoning or go through a rezoning, which is again, a public process with neighborhood notification, et cetera.
Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have anything like to say? No? Pardon me? Yeah?
All right, my name is Kevin Smith. I'm a resident of Sterling Ponds. I live right across the street from the park. I guess first off, one of my questions is how can you lightly market parkland that hasn't been undedicated yet? And from there, just personally, that park gets a heck of a lot of use. My kids love it. We go there every night. I know I have some neighbors here. Their kids also use it every night, shooting hoops, playing on the park, whatever. That undedicated place, that land that you're looking at, it is not mowed once or twice a year. It's never mowed. It's not taken care of at all. That's why it doesn't have anybody using it. With all the people there that use it, my kid has made numerous friends there. If we were to keep that parkland and do something to bring to the community, it would get a lot of use. You know, we've got Triangles Park. We go there a lot. There's a lot of space there that the community would love to have, whether it be biking paths, more basketball courts, tennis courts, whatever. It's just, but sitting how it is, it just doesn't get used. It doesn't get taken care of. A lot of the community members like to go fishing in the pond. You know, it's just stuff we like to do as a community. And I would like to see it stay that way or bring more to it because it will get used. It will bring more members of River Falls to Sterling Ponds rather than taking it and making it for light commercial residential. So I guess I just wanted that to be heard, and I guess it does bug me a little bit that it's been marketed already. How can something that is still parkland be marketed for commercial use? It doesn't seem right. But
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you. I think I hope nobody's getting lost in the fact that the city likes parks. It's obvious. We have parks everywhere. We like parks. We love our parks. The city's known for parks. Every community, every neighborhood has a park. You guys have lots of parkland out there. It's a great area. Every neighborhood has it. You know, I think sometimes we forget, and I think somebody mentioned, I can't remember who it was, about the cost of and what it cost us to maintain our parks. That kind of gets lost sometimes. So, you know, people say they're interested in keeping that parkland, which is fine. I get that. We love parks. But if we want to start maintaining that park, we want to start adding stuff out there, we have to kind of refigure everything because we have a certain dollar amount right here. So if we're trying to make that park bigger, well, that dollar amount has got to spread out over more. So we'd have to rethink the park plan we have in place now. Maybe we can't afford something else out there. Maybe we'll have to go a little thinner on something. But we kind of got to keep that in the back of our mind when we make all these decisions, that we only have so much money for parks. And we have a lot of parks, and everybody wants their neighborhood park to look good. We want all our neighborhood parks to look good. Sometimes that means we can't have as much as we want. So I hope everybody remembers that we are big pro parks in town here, but sometimes money is a huge factor in all these decisions too. I hate to say that, but we only have so much to use. Anyways, I just kind of wanted everybody to remember that aspect of this too. So anyways, anybody else have anything they want to say?
Can I
Yep.
ask a question? And it can just be guessed, but how many homes are out in Sterling Ponds right now? And how many buildable lots are left to build on? Guess, I mean, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I do not have those numbers at my fingertips tonight. If I had to put a number on open lots yet, would it be 25-ish?
So it would be
That's
safe to say that
just
it's,
about
it's
up.
filled up.
It's just about filled up, yes.
Built to capacity for what's there.
Right. And originally, I know that there was 676 dwelling units, but I think that dropped maybe to 470-ish when we sold the
sounds- okay.
corporate park, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Kathy Peterson again. So I know when we spoke earlier, you made a comment that the undedication is just being proposed at this point in time. I second what Kevin said. I find it very disheartening that you've lightly marketed something that's not even there yet. And that's where these rumors are starting that we talked about earlier and that kind of thing. So to lightly market something that's not even a done deal yet, that rubs me the wrong way. One of the main reasons we built in Sterling Ponds was because of the open space, was because of the parks, you know, and again, I understand that it costs money to upkeep, completely understand that, but at the same time, I think it needs to be, especially if you're going to put something commercial in there, you need to get information from the residents as to what they would like to see, rather than just, you know, go to the highest bidder. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
I've got
Yep.
a couple personal
Yep.
comments. I actually think this is an important enough issue that it really should get in front of the city council. There's, as Patricia described, there's a kaleidoscope of past plans and changing hands, and also there's the bigger picture of the entire city and our upcoming comp plan and how this fits in. So I guess I'm in favor of like booting it upstairs, so that all the elected, so that people who are elected can get the issue in front of them. People have an opportunity to weigh in, and then the council can decide, you know, whether or not to go through what is admittedly an existing plan that has been partially implemented. So that will influence my vote.
Okay. Sure.
Don Peterson, 3166 Sussex. One thing about Sterling Ponds, it's locked there. There's one way in and two ways out. They both come in the same street, right down from the park. So no matter what you put there, even if it's a dog park, the only way to get there is to come down the exact same street. And the only way to get out of there is to go that way, or then there's an exit right on the same street that goes into the corporate park. So whatever you bring there, there's only one way getting in. Those residents on that street are gonna see nothing, as we see with the construction right now. It all has to come down that street. So whatever you put in this park, with this land is right at the end of that street. So whatever goes there, they have to come down that one street. So we have to think about something, either another way in or out of that place, or, you know, and I don't know what that option is. You're landlocked by the ABC 35 and the business park. So I'm not sure where another, and then houses. So.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
That.
Hi, my name is Joelle Hooley. I live in the Sterling Ponds development. With all due respect, you know, those of you that are motioning first and second to proceed with undedicating, my guess, and it's probably not a fair guess, but my guess is that none of you live in our neighborhood, just like probably most of the people that voted for the industrial park in our neighborhood also probably didn't live in our neighborhood at that time. Am I incorrect in that?
Yep, we vote on a lot of stuff in neighborhoods we don't live on. That's kind of our job.
Right, no, I'm just asking.
Yep.
And I would say too,
And
just
then
making a motion.
also, in terms of undedicating, so long as I understood the map, this is the first time I've had an opportunity to view the map. I guess I'm just not understanding why the undedication would be commercial residential when you already have unused lots in the industrial park. Was that explained and maybe I missed it?
You want to kind of, yeah, explain the traditional neighborhood thing again? Yeah, hang on one second. Show Amy will.
So the corporate park is zoned industrial, and the rest of the neighborhood is zoned traditional neighborhood development, which requires some commercial. So originally in the plan, the commercial was to be at the corner of Chapman and Hubert. That has changed to residential. So in order to comply with zoning, there needs to be some piece of commercial. So we thought that could be the opportunity for that commercial piece.
And then, so like other residents have mentioned, you know, right at the very beginning, Mayor, you had mentioned, you know, there's just a lot of rumors going around, but clearly they're not just rumors. If you're already proposing a daycare and potentially a convenience store.
No, we think the daycare would be a great spot there. Nobody has brain
You
city
think
plans.
a daycare would be great, but
well,
I mean, again,
that was kind of the ideal when we talked about commercial. Nobody's bringing anything to us. Nobody's talked to us about plans. Nobody's bringing anything to us.
it will go to the highest bidder.
No, it won't go to the highest bidder.
Okay.
I'm
sorry, maybe I misunderstood.
We would not. Hopefully, you trust us enough to know that we would not put something in there that would not work in your neighborhood.
Like
We
the
do
industrial
not-
park.
We do not do that anywhere. We do not do that.
Okay.
So
Okay. And then also, in terms of transparency, I don't know if it's possible, but social media is everywhere. I mean, I think you may or may not be aware that Sterling Ponds has our own Facebook page. When I called to inquire about this whole meeting for tonight, I travel extensively for my job, so I don't think immediately to go to the City of River Falls website to find out what's happening in my neighborhood. Is it possible that, you know, we could be notified as residents of Sterling Ponds, you know, within the Facebook website, or is that just something that's not feasible?
well, we can look at. I'm sorry.
There is, you can sign up on the city's webpage to get emails about upcoming meetings and with a link to the agenda. So, and that'll automatically show up in your email.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Oh, we
And
don't
then I
know.
guess lastly, if you don't mind me saying, I've lived in the Sterling Ponds development since 2004.
Oh.
And when the industrial park came to what it is now, prior to, and correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody was here then, but I believe that we, the residents in Sterling Ponds, we received actual formal notification in writing about the status of things. So I think it seems like a disconnect that now we're no longer receiving anything in writing, but now we're finding out, oh, this, you know, this part of the acreage has already been surveyed, and maybe that's just a rumor. You can correct me on that, but I guess I think it would be worth your while to reach out to the residents in writing as well. Maybe that's a thing of the past, but I know for a fact for the industrial park, we were notified in writing for those plans.
For what we were building there.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what's changed since then to now?
That you wanted us to a written notice to everybody that lives out there that we're doing the undedication.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's in our neighborhood. I don't know why that's any different than the industrial park, but that's just my opinion. I mean, I don't know.
No, we can definitely look at that.
Well, it's kind of water under the bridge at this point,
Yep.
though.
Yep, it is.
So,
Sorry.
well, okay, thank you.
Jay Benson. Lisa Moody, have you ever heard of Autobahn.com? Okay. Thanks. That's it.
Okay. So let's move on. You got a first and a second on this? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
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 Okay. You get that, Angie? Yep.
Patricia was aye, or aye for not doing it.
Buddy, if that's okay.
Yep.
Make it really clear here.
Yep.
Let's see here. Holtkamp?
Nay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it.
That was a no. I'm
No.
against it.
Okay, thank you guys. It's hard, okay. LaRue?
No, I'm against it.
Moody?
No.
Odine?
Yes.
I don't know who that was. Prendergast?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have, see, Amy's gonna give us a little update.
I believe the mayor does vote on plan commission.
Yeah, I vote. I voted yes. I think it should go in front of the council too. That's what we elected him for.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm not moving again. Let's jump into the director's report, and I'll be quick just because I know we've got another meeting after this one. So I'll just take a few minutes to highlight a bit of our work. First off, I would like to talk to you just about some upcoming dates for Plan Commission. So I don't know if you have your calendars with you or if you can mark this down and get back to me if you have conflicts, but I was just wanting to put July 5th and September 5th in front of you. So both of those are just the days after holidays. I want to make sure that we've got a quorum for those dates, and if we do not, that we look for an alternative date. Any thoughts now, or do you want to email me separately?
I'd have to do
I'm
it
good.
virtually again, but I can do it.
Okay, well then we should potentially have a quorum. We'll go from there. Good, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'm probably going to skip the update on Forkes River Falls because we're probably going to dive deep into that in the next meeting.
Okay.
I will note that we've got over 650 people registered on engagerf.org currently. We are planning on a walking tour this month and a biking tour next month. And then meetings this month will include ours this evening and then the park board on June 15th as well. Planning, zoning, inspections, code enforcement. Obviously, we've got development projects that are coming through that you guys are working on. Next month, we will have code enforcement ordinances in front of you, a whole slew of them. So you can prepare for that. HPC continues to work on their historic signs and panels, and it looks like our building permits were ticking up as the weather gets better. So on the economic development side, staff continued to focus on the RFEDC with their meetings and duties, and has shifted into a moderately high gear for the Man Valley Project Management to keep that development prospect moving forward. Also attended the Pierce County Awards Breakfast here in River Falls last month. Engineering on Powell Avenue Bridge, we did get the award from the state, so construction will take place in 2023. that was good news. We are expecting the North Water Tower construction to begin in June this month, and are still working on the Wells Park sidewalk design as well. And during May, our engineering and public works staff spent a fair amount of time with second graders in the community on Public Works Awareness Week. That's it, unless you have specific questions for me. Yep.
Okay.
May I make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
First and
Second.
second adjourn, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, please. In the training room, we're set up.